Welcome to Sacred Rebellion. I'm Kim Andryc.
And I'm Lora Solomon. In this podcast, we defy convention and shatter the stereotypes of what it means to be healthy and holy.
It's time to rebel.
Let's do this. Coming up on this episode, we're back.
Whoop, whoop.
We got a fun guest today. I'm very excited about this.
I am too. I'm such a huge fan of what she practices. So
yes.
Novalee Wilder is a Danish actress, an artist turned professional numerologist and writer living in Los Angeles.
She has explored personal growth techniques and the keys to understanding the human condition through all her work. Yet the life-altering experience of changing her name, women usually change their name just by getting married. I like that.
Or divorced.
Or divorced. No, I like that there's another way. Through numerology opened up a whole new world for her. And she now helps clients across the world change their name and their life.
She is the author of A Little Bit of Numerology, the host of the Numerology Podcast, and founder of the Numerology School. Novalee, welcome. Welcome to the Rebellion.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be part of the rebellion.
Yes. Who doesn't want to be part of the rebellion?
Everybody.
So yeah, there is so much here. Just in introducing you, I thought of something in the Jewish tradition. One of the things that they will do if someone is dying, they will come in and change their name. And the thinking behind it is that it gives them a new chance at life. Like actually just changing their name gives them new life. So there is something very powerful about that, right?
Names are extremely powerful. And I find that in many religions or just traditions and cultures, there is a name change as part of like a rite of passage between like two parts of your life. But the changing your name when you are very sick or dying also happens in Bali. So if a baby, for example, is born and is really, really sick and really, really struggling, they will rename the child. Because they'll be like, okay, something happened here and they haven't been here long enough to like accumulate karma in a bad way or something. So we must have done something. Let's change it. So I think it's it's normal for people actually like in different cultures to think, okay, a name has an impact. I mean, of course I believe it. No, I'm a numerologist, so I believe very strongly that our names have a really big impact on our life. Yeah.
So tell us about, the process that you went through, kind of what thinking brought you to the place where you took the action to change your name, and then what happened after that point.
Well, I'm a little bit of a go big or go home kind of person.
I like that.
Like Kim.
I find that, if it's the right thing, I want to do it fully. I feel like the whole thing about regrets, I feel like I've very rarely regretted anything I've done really fully or felt very called to do. I think it's sometimes more dangerous to not answer the call. Because the call knows where you live.
And they keep coming. It keeps coming.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, and I have these conversations with my clients and my friends, that thing where we will have a nudge or an intuition, like something comes up and we're like, maybe I should do this thing. And we wait for a bigger sign, we do something, and then suddenly we're pushed. So back in 2014, I think, I moved to New York to study acting, and I'm from Denmark, having lived my whole life there. And everything was new, people were new, the language was new, the city was new, and New York I fell in love with New York. And I was the same old. I realized like these patterns I'm going through, these thoughts I'm having, the things I'm experiencing with friends, men, landlords, teachers, they're the same. What's going on here? I've worked really hard in many different modalities on changing my life and who I am. And so one of my friends had just changed her name, and a lot of really good shit was happening in her
Mhm.
life. And I was like, what is this? And so I got curious. And I feel like this is also how intuition happens. We get curious. We fall into like a hole in Google on YouTube or something, or even in a library or a bookstore. And so I got curious about numerology, and something just said yes. And like my logical brain was like, what are we doing? This is weird.
Mhm.
But I saw a numerologist. I had a session. She talked me through not only my name at the time, but also my birthday, the numbers in my birthday. And she was like, this is who you're supposed to be, and you're not really going there. And I was like, how did you know? How did you know that I'm not really going there? So I decided to just go for it. I was living in the US. I had many new friends, but I hadn't known them for that long. So I was like, I can show up the next day with a new name. Why not? So I did it. Like, I legally changed my entire name. I don't have anything that connects me to my old name or my family in that way. And really great stuff started happening. And I will say, like, I can do the measurable things. Like, I lost a ton of weight. I met the love of my life. I got married. I won the green card lottery. I started studying numerology. I got a book contract. Like, a lot of really good stuff happened on the outside that you can kind of like count and go like, oh, this is different. But to me, the internal shift is way more important. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the one that people can't see, but that I can feel really deeply.
Or maybe they can see, because
Yeah,
I mean, all the things that you just talked about, we often talk here about, and the outside changes as a result of the work that you do on the inside. Yeah.
So what did your mother say when you're like, hey, Ma, change my name?
Yeah, well, my mom passed in 2013, I think. And I think I wouldn't have actually, I don't know if I wouldn't have changed my name, but I wouldn't have left Denmark if my mom was still alive. I think all families have a smaller or bigger dysfunction.
You think?
All families have some skeletons in the closet. And I realized after my mom passed, I knew it while she was alive, because she was a dysfunctional person. She was an addict, that I felt a lot of responsibility for her. Even if I wasn't like physically with her, I felt, like you
didn't feel free.
Yeah, I didn't feel fully free to just go on, do my own thing, or leave, or like move continents. Let's say that. Like, it would probably, I was looking at schools in like Germany and Norway and stuff like that, and that would probably have been okay distance wise. But it was only after she passed that I was like, fuck it. Like, why am I not investing more? And also, like, when people pass, everything comes into perspective, and you realize how few things really matter.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that we think matter, and then when death comes along, you're like, oh, none of this stuff really matters. Or relationships where you're like, oh, I thought we were friends, but now I have death in my life and you can't handle it. And so you need to go. Yeah. So my dad did feel like it was really weird that I changed my name, but all people have weird stories about their names. Actually, my mom had told him before I got born that he needed to change the spelling of his last name because it was too hard to spell. And she was like, I don't want my kid to have that name unless we can spell it easier. So I think somehow me changing my name, he was like, well, I mean, what am I going to do about, like, I mean, parents are often like, oh, to me, you'll always be, little Kim or like little Lora or whatever. And then we grow up and we're like, yeah, but I'm not little Kim anymore. Like, now I'm a different person. I didn't have I wasn't afraid of it. Like, I wasn't afraid of his opinion about it. So it wasn't a really big deal. I do know that, like we all have, I'm really afraid of this person's reaction to whatever I'm doing. And if I'm really afraid of it, they're going to have a big reaction. And the more calm and and just collected I am about it, the easier it is to be for them to
Yeah.
deal with it. Yeah.
So, I don't know a whole lot about numerology. Actually, just was learning some about tantric numerology yesterday. And I don't know how similar that is or different to what you do, but it doesn't use the name, it uses the date of birth.
Yeah.
But just the idea, I mean, this I totally get, that the language of the universe is vibration, sound, and there is math to it. So there like the language of the universe, we don't, that kind of underlying fabric is math, is numbers,
Yeah.
and vibration and frequency. And, saying your name, like there's a frequency to speaking, like that's the power of our voice, and being able to say things is that what comes through. And I was thinking, so when I grew up, I'm a middle name, and everyone knew me by that name. And even now, if I see my cousins, or they don't call me Lora. Okay. And my middle name is Dell. And they didn't even say Laura Dell. My name was Lordell.
Okay.
Lordell, like that. And it was just kind of the way they said it. Like, and still, if you said Laura to them, they'd be like, who are you talking about?
Lardell.
Lordell, And so it's kind of funny when I think about that person, and she feels like a different person to me.
Yeah.
And when someone calls me that, I feel different.
I think this is very common, actually, being called something different by certain parts of your family. My old name was Ava Christine. My entire family called me Christine. And I've never felt, I want to say, like, I might have felt like an Ava at times, but I never felt like a Christine. And so when I was 8 years old, I realized that my first name was Ava, and I told like my class and my friends that, hey, I want to be called Ava. This Christine is like, it's too long. It's spelled with a CH, and everyone tries to shorten it to something annoying. I'm not a Chris or a Chrissy or whatever. I'm like, I'm Ava. So for me, the split energetically happened a little bit there around like 8 years old. And that meant that like every new person I was meeting was like enforcing the Ava energy. And whenever I came home and was called Christine, I felt like, you're not really talking to me, because I'm not really that person anymore. And even at times where I told my family, hey, I would like to be called Ava, I was a little bit like refused. They were like, oh, but to me, you will always be. And I would always be like, and to me, you're just going to be someone who doesn't deal well with change then, dad or sister. I'm like, come on, man. If I showed up with like blonde hair tomorrow and I just had blonde hair for 10 years, would you still be like, well, to me, you'll always have brown hair. I'm like in front of you with blonde hair, and you were like still keeping that old image.
It's like not being seen.
Yeah. And I think it's always interesting when people come to me and I work with people who have different versions of that experience, where I'm like, well, to me, it's a nudge that maybe one of the names are right, or maybe there's more exploration to do. Like maybe this split or not feeling totally connected. People also have like middle names they don't like, or people who get married. I say this to anyone out there who's thinking about getting married and taking his name. Unless you really love that name, unless that name feels really better than whatever you got going on, don't take it. Don't take on a name you don't like. You can love a person without taking their name. I'm married to a wonderful man, and even though I could energetically take his last name because it has the same energy as my name, I like my last name. Like I like Wilder so much more than Ford, which is his last name. So why would I change it? And he was also like, oh, I guess I could take your name. And I was like, honey, do not take my name unless you're really excited about it. Because, if anyone's gone through a divorce and name change again, it can be really troublesome. And it usually is a sign that, like maybe the connection wasn't supposed to be not that deep, but like with the name change on top of it.
Yeah, it's really complex when you think about it.
I'm feeling condemned. I'm feeling very condemned. I have a confession to make.
Yeah.
Go for it, Kim.
So my son will be 26 next month. And he was born Michael Richard III, which I was not a fan of. Like he and his father and I debated the full, probably 7 of the full 9 months or 10 months. And I just couldn't break my then husband's heart, who he had his heart set on having a third, which I thought was really, I wasn't a fan.
Yeah.
So the deal we made in the delivery room was that we would name him Michael Richard III, but we would call him Trey, which is a commonly used nickname for the third.
Yeah.
And I loved that name. And at 8 years old, 3rd grade, he came home and declared. And so I was basically your mom. He declared he no longer wanted to be called Trey. He wanted to be called Michael. And he was very adamant. And I figured it was a phase, it would pass. It has still never passed. And I'm the stubborn mom that says, I'm going to keep calling you Trey.
Wow, Kim.
Yeah. And it's also like the stories matter to us, like the stories we tell our children about their names and how we pick them. It's, it's not uncommon.
Choosing a name is a big deal.
It's a big deal.
It's one of the main focuses while a woman is pregnant is what am I going to name this baby? And that's like a big conversation that you have. It's a big deal.
And I tell this story, like I made a sacrifice for my ex-husband, but it was a sacrifice with a condition. It never dawned on me in that situation that the child was going to have an opinion. It just didn't.
I think it's the thing. Yeah. The thing about letting everyone in general do what they want to do, and that like even in our family, people don't owe us allegiance or owe us sometimes to like follow the story or the path that, we saw for them. And yeah, it's just interesting how it happens. And I just say like the biggest gift you can give to anyone is to honor how they tell their own story. And that doesn't mean that, okay,
see how that's going over with Kim. Kim's like, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
No, I'm sitting here going, I have to do this now. And it's only taken me, what? He was
20 years.
8. Yeah. He's 26, like 18 years.
18 years
me.
It's interesting what comes up of emotions around it. Some people are really afraid of, for example, having that conversation. I didn't have an actual conversation with my family about Ava versus Christine, which is now like totally out the window, until I was like in my middle 20s, because it felt like it would be too hard and people would have opinions. And I was like, I don't want to be rejected. So I'll just not have the conversation. It's fine. And what ended up happening when people then like, we had the conversation, they just stopped saying my name. They just stopped. Like people who
they just said, "Oh, hey you,
hey there,
yeah,
hey honey."
We all know people who use a name a lot, and there are people who never. I mean, for example, my husband, when he calls me Nova, I know I'm in trouble because he normally doesn't like yell my name through the house or anything like that. But when he's like Nova, I'm like, oh, what did I do? Because our relationship is not like, I don't know, we just don't say each other's names a lot. But if you have a relationship where a name gets said a lot, then, I mean, to me, it's an act of love.
I know.
To honor what people want to be called, what gender they identify with, if they change their mind about their relationships or the job they have or where they want to live, or even like ideas about the world. I'm just like allowing people to change, because then they are also more inclined to have that conversation with you if something comes up.
Yeah.
But I understand deeply that once you've named some, but I understand.
He does, and it's his name. So
yeah. And maybe he doesn't care. Some people care. Some
no,
people
he cares
so much.
He cares.
Yeah.
He's just given up because it's been 18 years. And I'm
Yeah.
still calling him
Yeah.
Trey. I know it's terrible. I feel terrible about this right now.
But it might bring something up. Like there's something underneath it. Like,
yeah, it's that,
you know?
I mean, it just seemed so, I don't know, egoic for my ex-husband to want to name. I don't understand.
Yeah, I
want
know
to
it would
name
also
somebody-
be on the compromise of it. I understand, like I would also maybe have some issues as the raging feminist I am about like Richard III.
Yeah.
Um,
And my son says when he has a son, he's going to name him the fourth. I'm like, oh,
come on. That's really funny and horrible at the same time.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Novalee.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
let's say I decide like I'm going to change my name. Like I say, I don't like this name anymore. Like, what is that? So what does that look like? Like, how would you support somebody? They come to you and they say,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
I'm getting the nudge. Like I need a new name.
So first of all, I think we backpedal a little bit and we start with like some general numerology knowledge. And that knowledge is that there are 9 numbers. After 9, we get to 10, and 10 is 1 plus 0. So it's just 1 again. There are 9 numbers. And depending on the day you were born, you have one of these numbers. And this number has an expression in the world. It's going to affect your personality, your dreams, your goals, your temperament, your skill set, your challenges, all of these things. And we are all kind of expressing different energies. This is connected to like astrology and human design and other personality type things. I think numerology is the
Oh my God. I just
original
realized
Enneagram.
something.
Is that good?
what?
Yeah, my date of my birth, it's a 14, so it's a 5, and I'm a 5 in the Enneagram.
Yeah, the Enneagram has taken some notes. Okay, let's taken some notes from
Okay.
numerology for
I
sure.
see.
And like also you can't have astrology or human design without numerology. The numbers are
You're right. It
the
always comes back
foundation.
to the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. So the number is supposed to express something. You're supposed to express and experience something in this life. Now the name acts as a filter. So it kind of filters this experience. It kind of attracts certain things. And this is also why like some names work for some people because it supports what they're here to do. And some names don't work for some people because it like deteriorates or
like dimming
distorts.
the light.
Yeah, dimming the light is a good image. When I teach, I often say that like the number or your soul is kind of like a ray of light.
Mm-hmm.
And the name is like a crystal. So the light can fracture in beautiful ways or in ugly ways. And it can also like affect how we see ourselves. So if people come to me and they're like, I'm thinking about a name change, and they give me a number of reasons. I'm getting divorced. I've never liked my name. I was always called one thing by my family and another by my friends. I'm just curious. I've always blah, blah, blah. I've tried other things. I've had a drag name or something like that. When the name is the intuitive hit, I feel like the soul is saying, hey, my light is distorted. I need a better crystal here or I need something different. I've been looking through this crystal. I'm done with it. The lessons and everything. I'm moving on. But the first thing we do is we map out what this crystal or this name has done because we need to be seen. I feel like this goes for all healers and helpers and modalities. The first step is to be seen. When we feel seen, then we feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can allow ourselves to go further. So usually my sessions are equal parts. Let me see you. Let me tell you what I see.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it gets very specific because I am also a little like clairvoyant. So sometimes things come through and I'm like, I don't know why I'm using this image, whatever. And they're like, oh, yes, I understand. And then we go to find a stronger crystal. So I always keep what I can. So if something is beautiful in a name, like an energy that is powerful and supportive, we keep that. We keep as much as we can, always. Because it's a little bit of an identity crisis to go through a name change. Who am I then? What sound do I make when I pick up the phone? What's my email address again? Like it can like mess with you. And that's also where like support is needed when people go through a name change. So I basically pick out vibrations that support people, and then I give them name lists where every name on that list has that vibration, and then they pick a name. So I don't go like, you need to be called this and that. I feel like that's taking all the agency away. The biggest thing that people say after a session with me is how empowered they feel. And I'm like, yes, you go do that. You go feel empowered. You go feel seen, feel safe. And then here's the like map of finding a new name and all the pitfalls that comes with that. Like,
yeah. So I was looking on your website because it said, you can do this and it's kind of your private name and you don't really share it with the world. It's more of an internal experience versus doing the other extreme is a full on, you change your birth certificate. I guess you can't change your birth certificate, but you legally.
Well, in most countries you can actually.
Okay,
like if you change your name, you get a new birth certificate, depending on what country.
That's
but yes,
actually quite powerful in and of itself. But just the idea, and how that's attached to your social security number. Yeah. I mean, I guess in most parts of the world, as soon as you're born, you have access to getting this government issued number.
Yeah.
Right. Is that not the case anywhere in the world?
I mean, like a social security number or a personal number goes for most countries that have like digitalized also their systems. For example, like if you change your name in Denmark, it is a digital system and it's going to erase your old name and put in the new name and give you access to a new birth certificate. And unless people have access to those records, you're going to officially be that new name completely. I feel like in the US, people are still happy with paper. So sometimes there are just more steps and institutions and people you have to deal with to go through a name change. Canada, Australia, like Scotland and Great Britain, like there are different steps. Some places you can just start calling yourself a new name, and that's cool. And other places you have to go through some steps to change your name. I recommend, I mean, the real change is doing the big scary thing. The real change is that. So like we live in a world where there are systems that are created and we live inside these systems. So if you want to see real effect of certain things, you have to change it inside the system. I have had people who have had a name change session, found a new name, but not actually gone through any of the legal stuff. And it feels like the change only lasts so long. It feels like it was a stone thrown into water. So like there's some ripples for a while, but then the water is the same. So with a legal name change, you change all these vibrations and they become you. When people, I mean, I had a conversation with my old Alexandra teacher who was like, but what is your real name? And I was like, well, my real name is Novalee Wilder. I also got a bunch of middle names, but like, that's my name. And she was like, but your real name. And I was like, you mean my birth name? Because that's interesting. I mean, again, part of numerology or working with name changes, we tap into some like really solid structures that people have around what am I allowed to do?
Yes.
And who do I owe the telling of it to?
Yes.
And who is holding this memory of me?
Yeah. It's happening into the power of story.
Yeah.
Right. And there's collective story. Right. So there's like this collective consciousness of your real name is the name that your parents gave you when you were born. And there can be no other name for you that is actually real.
Everything else is just fake.
Everything else.
Well, it's interesting because, people get adopted or their parents get married again and new names are being moved around, or women get married and go through multiple last names maybe throughout their life.
I've had 3.
Somehow we're okay with that. We're okay. We're like, oh, you're allowed. You're allowed to do that. But for example, I had this conversation with a client who was like, I don't want to go back to my maiden name. I also don't like that. So I want a new name. And she was like, but I'm having a really hard time giving myself permission to come up with a new last name, because when we dug a little deeper, a man is supposed to give me that. Like, I know that's not actually the law, but when we dug into a little bit of her stories around it, she could tell that, like, it felt like she had more permission if she got married or something.
All right. So
And
I want
was
to,
like, interesting. Yeah.
I want to
Sorry,
talk
that was a
about this.
tangent.
No, that's okay. I'm kind of going in that tangent with you. So I went and played on your website. You offer some free resources. One of them is the numerology name calculator. And I was just playing with that. And, so I was married for 24 years and got a divorce, and, you know, I've had his name. I changed my name when I married him. And I've had his name. I had his name for 24 years. And, you know, from the time I was 23 years old. So most of my life, that has been my name. And I'm a professional, and my children have that name. So and it was going to be a pain in the ass to change my name, get everybody to use a different name. So I made a conscious decision to keep his name. And so I went out on the website, and my first dilemma was, well, do I use my real name, meaning the name that I was given, or do I use my married name to a man that I'm no longer married to? And
you use your legal name. Yeah. Use your legal name. That's like the easiest. Sometimes people go like, well, what if this is my nickname, or what if they shortened it on my social security card, or what if I'm like, legal name, pick that one, because it's in the system. So that's what's going to affect you. But it would be interesting to look at the two options. Look at how was life before and how was life after. And I mean, when we go deeper into like the numeroscope, which is like more aspects beyond the name, I also see sometimes people keep marrying new men, but they keep marrying into the same energy. So even though they divorce whoever it is, they keep getting a last name that has the same energy. Somehow we are attracted to what we know.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what was interesting to me is that, you know, it gives you 3 numbers, one for your first, middle, and last name. So all the numbers were the same except for the last one. And my given name at childbirth, not my current legal name, was the last name was related to higher responsibility, which made a lot of sense to me.
25/7.
Yes. And then, or no, 34/7.
Oh, 34. Yeah. Higher version of the same thing. Yes.
And then when I put my married name in there, it actually gave me 16/7, which is the tower, which doesn't seem very positive, which is also what my middle name is. So it gave me 2 towers. So my middle name is a tower, and now my married
last name is a tower. Yeah, it's always I mean, we're getting into specifics.
Yeah, I don't want you to
get
too specific.
No, it's actually better to have 2 towers, I will say, than have 1 tower.
Oh, good. All right, good.
Still, the tower, like, people know it from the tarot. If people know tarot cards, they know the tower card. And the tower card implies that there is sudden change, loss of footing. When we boil it down vibrationally, the lowest end of the 7 spectrum is fear. So the longer we live with this vibration, the less we are actually walking around in fear, because we get very used to it. And I'm not giving you like a personal reading right now, but it's just like me creating the calculator. I realized that I had to like really boil things down and hope that if people were interested, they would either go like sign up for my newsletter and get a little bit of a book, or like buy my book and get a little more specific. Because when you just boil down a name vibration, sometimes they're very much a slap in the face. So I mean, when my old line of life, the names that I carried, when my numerologist explained them to me, I was like, how dare you? And also, you're right. Because it was so specific also to my inner experience. For example, 16/7, people are rarely filled with anxiety and fear walking around through life, but they get very like tenacious. They get very good at dealing with, you know, the tower, sudden loss of footing. in different ways. And they also get very used to, I mean, to me, it's like, it translates to hypervigilancy, like scanning the surroundings.
Yeah.
Just being aware of them. Yeah. So, but it's good actually. It's better to have two towers because they're competing. So like big things have a harder time getting through. And if you ever did like a reading, you would maybe see that like the 16-7 was actually more prevalent in your life before you had it twice. Because growing up with it, also it does different things. Like sometimes when I read for people or I read for children, I can see big scary things for their children, but I know that it didn't actually happen to the child. The child's world is the parents. So like whatever it is actually happening for the parent. Everything also seems bigger when we're a child. Like when we grow up and we realize, okay, like this big thing wasn't so overwhelming, or like I was actually safe, but my experience as a child was that maybe I wasn't safe, or this big thing was like, you don't have a lot of agency when you're a child. If your parents want to move or do something, you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm moving. Bye, friends. And that can be like, you know, traumatizing in different ways. Yeah.
But I think,
but it also depends. Sorry, I just want to add here. It also depends on who carries the name. So different people are going to deal differently with the tower. Like for example, in a high version, tower is reinvention, and Madonna is a celebrity who carries a lot of 7 energy. She's born on a date that adds up to 7, and she has 16-7 all over her like chart. So it's all reinvention, 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 because kind of tower movement said, I will break it down before someone else breaks it down. So I will reinvent myself before someone comes and says, you can't be that anymore. So depending on who you are, it can, I don't know if I want to say work for you, but like it can help you more or less. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I know that you have a podcast, and I gave a listen to one of the episodes. So talk a little bit about what you do on your podcast.
So the podcast is usually mostly forecasts. I've taken a little bit of a break after the forecast for 2020 because I was teaching the Numerology School and I'm working on a book. And the podcast is whipped cream on top of the cake. So they're mostly forecasts, but I also do go through a couple of case studies. This is something that, I mean, I am a nerd, like people are with their field. And I love like watching a documentary and going like, oh, let me do this math and see like, how does it fit and how are people expressing things? Because I feel like most modalities, it can be very general when we hear about certain things, like I talked about the tower, but sometimes we can see it in people's lives. So I have a lot of ideas also for YouTube videos, because I would love to do more also celebrity name changes. It's one of those things when they
I was thinking about Prince. And Madonna.
Prince. Yes, Kanye West changed his name, and like
they
people
almost all have, right?
Yeah. Or they just are known by different things, like Emma Stone is actually Emily Stone. Meryl Streep is not Meryl Streep. Like a lot of people are known by one name, which also has like that slight distortion energy. Actually, it can add to the confusion. I want to say, like if I ever got, well, Novalee Wilder, I don't think I'm in like conflict with anyone if I got into like SAG or something, but I recommend you find a pet version of your real name if you ever get famous and need to do that. Because like Emma and Emily, for example, they don't really mesh energetically. So she's going to feel the split between those two energies. But the podcast is mostly forecasts. So I forecast a month because we all go through, and I try to be as positive as possible because I feel like no one wants to listen to doom and gloom. And then, you know, after the pandemic, I realized maybe we want to know what is coming. But then again, like, would we really act differently if we knew I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. We just released an episode called The Rapture. Are you ready? And it seemed to be really popular. So
Yeah.
who knows?
Well,
Like,
people
I mean,
love the dramatic things. I get it, I get
apocalyptic
it.
end of times. You
Yes.
know?
Yes.
Yeah. There's something
Yeah.
about that. Well, are you ready for the lightning round?
Yes, I am ready.
All right. Let's go for it. All right, Miss Novalee, what rules have you chosen to rebel against on your journey to health? Besides changing your name.
Besides changing my name, I think thinking there is one truth. Like the rule there is one way of doing things, one way of eating, being active, and really kind of measuring whatever the input is. Like, should you be intermittent fasting? Should you be sleeping without a pillow? Should you, whatever it is, like testing whatever it is against what does my body say in this moment? Does it say, yes, that sounds interesting? Do I lean forward? Like, do I actually have a physical positive reaction to it? Or do I lean back and think, oh no, not this. Oh no, another thing on my list. Yeah, I don't believe in absolute truths. I just don't. Yeah.
Okay. So what does it mean to you to be holy?
First of all, I love this question. I think it's like something people should ask themselves every day. Like, what could I do today to be holy? To me, it's owning your power. I felt like I have this wonderful person in my life, Bunny Loveshock, and she is an interfaith minister. And she told the internet and Instagram at some point, she was like, you should go around blessing people today. You have the power to bless people. You can bless your cashier at the supermarket. You can bless your car. You can bless yourself. Stop waiting for, even if you're not religious, the priest to do it. Like, stop waiting for another authority to do it. You know, be full of blessings now, be holy now. So to me, it's owning our own divinity, like just owning it. Because I also feel like when I get to that level, I feel way less shame about being alive, about being a woman, about a bunch of things. When I start thinking in blessings and things that can be holy, things I can ritualize, that kind of energy, then there's way less shame and constriction in my life.
It's interesting. Last night, I held a feast for, yesterday was the Feast of Mary Magdalene. I had a ceremony. And at the end, one of the things that we talked about is that we have the power to bless each other. And so we went around and did a each of us blessed. And we used anointing oil that had been blessed by a priest, but wasn't required, right? It was just, we have the power. So I really appreciate that.
And we crave it. I think women crave to be blessed by other women.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes once in a while I have conversations with men or my husband, and they are going to have a male-centric view of things and think that women are doing certain things because of men. And I just say, well, most of the time I'm actually doing things because of women. Because of my sisters or my mom or my friends or myself, and like the female image. And I would love for the Great Mother in all women to say, hey, you're okay.
Yeah.
I bless you, you're okay, as you are in this moment. And also tomorrow, even if you have pimples or getting fatter or older, or all these things, you are blessed at each step of the way. I love this question. I have written it down on my little piece of paper to like think about every day.
All right. Final question. What would you like to say to a listener right now to help them to rise up?
I mean, there are no rules in my world. Like, I find myself again and again, just as there are no absolute truths. I would say, what are these rules? What rule would you want to break today? And what would be the most pleasurable way of doing it?
Yes.
You know, it doesn't have to. Yeah, it doesn't have to be big and sledgehammery to break things apart. You know, if you wanted to create more beauty in the world, more softness, more pleasure, less shame, more blessings, more holiness, like to me, that's rising up. And it's also less about like feminine, masculine, gender roles, but just like, what is the rule you want to break today? Because like no one else is going to break it for you. Like we need to do it ourselves.
Spoken like a real sacred rebel.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, Novalee, thank you for joining us. We will include it in the show notes, but why don't you tell our listeners how they could get in touch with you and explore some of your offerings?
Yes. If you want the full universe, go to novaleewilder.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook, what have you, also under Novalee Wilder. I wrote that book, A Little Bit of Numerology, and it's really cute and pink. And I love when people tell me that they found me because of the little pink book. But I really think there's a lot of permission to be found in that book. So I really recommend, if you're a reader, go check it out. Oh, and I also wanted to let your listeners know that if they want to book a session, then the code LOVE gives them 10% off on my sessions and my web shop and stuff like that. Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you for the love.
Yes. Thank you for the love and for joining. Thanks for listening to Sacred Rebellion. We love connecting with you in this way. If you want to join the rebellion and enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Sacred Rebellion.
Give us a rating and review, and please recommend us to your tribe. Follow us on social media at Sacred Rebellion Podcast on Facebook and Instagram.
Until next time, stay curious,
stay courageous, and most of all, stay rebellious.